Chapter 1: New Beginnings. The hum of the Bentley's engine was the kind of sound Joshua Klene could lose himself in, smooth, balanced, predictable. The city rolled by in shades of silver and glass, reflected sunlight bouncing off high-rise towers as if the world itself was too bright, too loud. Inside the car, however, everything was order and calm. The faint scent of leather polish, the soft tick of the dashboard clock, his hands steady on the wheel. Joshua had built his life around such details, discipline in miniature. After 20 years in the Special Air Service, chaos was something he no longer sought. He preferred traffic lights to gunfire, GPS routes to maps marked with blood. "Mr. Davenport," Joshua said, glancing in the rearview mirror, "we'll reach the boardroom in 12 minutes. Clark Davenport barely looked up from his phone. Mid-40s, sharp suit, hair that cost a stylist's ransom. The kind of man who thrived in boardrooms but turned pale at turbulence on a plane. "Fine, Joshua. Thank you." Joshua nodded once, eyes back on the road. He didn't take it personally. CEOs were all the same, polite when convenient, distracted always. But Davenport was at least decent. Paid on time. Trusted Joshua more than he trusted half his staff. The morning traffic thickened around Hyde Park Corner, forcing Joshua to brake. His eyes flicked to the side mirror, a delivery van riding too close. He moved lanes smoothly, predicting its movement before it swerved. The other driver blared a horn, but Joshua didn't react. His pulse didn't rise. The battlefield had taught him one rule that still applied. Stay calm, or you die. The Bentley slipped into the underground parking beneath Davenport Tower, a 50-floor glass spear stabbing at the London skyline. Joshua stepped out first, straightened his tie, then opened the rear door for his employer. "Meeting with the investors, sir," he said. "Level 42. Clark smiled thinly. "If I come out early, that means it's going badly." Joshua gave the faintest hint of a smile. "Understood." Clark disappeared into the elevator. Joshua watched the doors close, then exhaled slowly. Another morning routine completed with precision. No alarms, no threats, no variables. Just the way he liked it. He walked the perimeter of the underground lot, eyes scanning instinctively. Most chauffeurs would scroll their phones or nap. Joshua observed. He noted the placement of cameras, the flow of vehicles, the security guard's posture. Old habits, ingrained, unshakable. A young attendant walked past, chewing gum, and nodded. "Morning, Mr. Klene." "Morning, son," Joshua said, voice low but even. He'd been called Mr. Klene now for almost 5 years. Few people knew he'd ever been Sergeant Major Klene of the SAS, one of the men who stormed the Iranian embassy in '80. That life had been filed away in sealed government records, classified and forgotten. Or so he believed. By noon, the clouds rolled over the city, bringing a drizzle that painted the windshields like dust. Joshua stood near the car, umbrella in hand, waiting, the kind of quiet that civilians thought peaceful, but which to him felt oddly loud. His phone buzzed in his pocket, an unfamiliar number. He hesitated. The contactless world rarely reached him unless it was Clark or dispatch. He answered anyway. "Joshua Klene." Silence. Then a faint, distorted male voice. "We remember you from Prince's Gate." Joshua froze. The words hit like an electric pulse to the spine. Prince's Gate, the SAS code name for the Iranian embassy siege, 1980. The voice continued, tone casual yet deliberate. "You left the service to drive cars. Respectable. But ghosts don't retire, Sergeant Major." The line went dead. Joshua stood in the drizzle, the hum of traffic above masking the sudden thud in his chest. His grip tightened on the phone. For a moment, he said nothing, didn't even move. Then, with a controlled breath, he pocketed the device and looked around. The underground lot was quiet. Too quiet. He climbed into the car, shutting the door softly. The rain tapped on the windshield. He replayed the call mentally, the phrasing, the distortion, the timing. Someone had knowledge only a handful of operators and intelligence officers would know. He called the number back. Disconnected. Joshua leaned back in the seat, eyes narrowing slightly. "You left the service to drive cars. Whoever that was, wasn't random. Someone had gone digging. He tapped the dash twice, an old calming tick, and looked at the small photo clip beside the steering wheel. His daughter and grandson on the Brighton pier, laughing. The image steadied him, but also reminded him what was at stake. When Clark returned, flustered but smiling, Joshua's professional mask had already returned. "How'd it go, sir?" Clark exhaled. "The investors will live another day." "How's my favorite ex-soldier?" Joshua half-smiled. Clark had heard whispers about his past, just enough to make him curious, but not enough to ask. "Still driving, sir. Still on time." "Good man." Clark patted his shoulder before sliding into the back seat. "Let's go home. I've had enough corporate warfare for one day." Joshua eased the car back into the rain-slick streets. As they moved through traffic, Clark talked idly about mergers and supply chains. Joshua listened, though half his mind was elsewhere, tracking every reflection, every tailing car. 2 streets from Clark's mansion, a black SUV cut across lanes and slowed abruptly in front of them. Joshua's eyes flicked to the mirror. Another car braked just behind them. His pulse didn't spike, it sharpened. "Sir," he said quietly, "please remain seated." Clark blinked. "What's—" The SUV ahead suddenly sped off. The car behind turned left at the next junction. Just traffic, perhaps. But to Joshua, it was a test. He drove on, slower, scanning license plates, counting intersections, memorizing patterns. When they reached Clark's gated estate, Joshua stepped out, inspected the perimeter before opening the passenger door. "You're unusually tense, Joshua," Clark said. "Just a long day, sir." But that night, after parking the Bentley and returning to his modest flat in Shepherd's Bush, Joshua didn't pour his usual glass of scotch. He sat at his kitchen table, phone in front of him, replaying the single phrase in his head. "We remember you from Prince's Gate." He powered down the phone, then removed the battery, old instincts resurfacing like muscle memory. From a locked drawer, he retrieved a small steel case, one he hadn't opened in years. Inside lay his service pistol, stripped and cleaned, its black metal gleaming faintly under the kitchen light. He didn't touch it yet, just looked. The following morning, a package arrived at Davenport Tower addressed to him. No return label. Inside was a folded newspaper, The Times, with a circle drawn in red marker around a short article on page 6. Davenport Technologies expands into defense contracts. Underneath, in neat printed letters, "You always protected the wrong people." Joshua stared at it for a long time. He slipped the page into his jacket pocket and went about his duties as usual. Engine checks, car wash, uniform pressed sharp as a blade. But something inside him had shifted. The rhythm of normal life was still there, but the silence behind it had changed tone, not peaceful, but watchful. That night, as he drove Clark through the heart of London once more, Joshua's eyes lingered longer on each reflection in the mirror. Every passing headlight felt like a signal. Every dark alley a whisper from the past. He had tried to bury that world, to become invisible among civilians. But someone, somewhere, had decided that Joshua Klene's quiet retirement was over. And as the Bentley rolled through the rain-slick streets, he knew one thing for certain. The ghosts of Prince's Gate had found him again. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. The call had changed everything. Joshua Klene hadn't slept much since that voice whispered about Prince's Gate. He had replayed it over and over in his mind. The tone, the distortion, the precision. It wasn't a prank. It was a message. Someone knew who he really was, and that someone wanted him to know it. 3 days later, he sat in his flat long after midnight, the glow of his laptop painting his face in cold light. Lines of data scrolled down his screen, procurement contracts, defense mergers, government tenders. Every one of them tied, somehow, to Davenport Technologies. Clark Davenport Company wasn't just making software anymore. They'd recently won contracts for surveillance systems and encryption algorithms used in drone guidance networks. That article in the Times hadn't been random. Clark had stepped into a shadow world, one Joshua knew too well. Joshua's fingers hovered over the keyboard as he ran a secondary check. The encrypted message thread he'd opened earlier had a single new reply. A burner email, registered in Cyprus, traced through 3 proxy servers. The The message was only 4 words. "You're next, Sergeant Major." Joshua sat back. The sound of rain against the window filled the silence. He reached for the mug of coffee he'd forgotten hours ago and drank it cold. He needed information, real, solid, verifiable. So, at dawn, he began to hunt the only way he knew how. By mid-morning, Joshua was at a military reunion bar tucked behind a row of pawn shops in Southwark. The air smelled of stale beer and memory. Men like him came here to remember or to forget. He walked to the counter and gave the bartender a nod. "Looking for someone. Ex-regiment. Name's Jerry Callow." The bartender squinted. "Jerry? Haven't seen him in months. He was here after Christmas. Said he had some contract work lined up. Africa, maybe. Your mate." Joshua's gaze was steady. "Old colleague." The man shrugged. "Try Isaac. He still drinks here Tuesdays. Plays cards in the back." Joshua turned. Sure enough, in the dim corner by the dartboard, sat Isaac Cole, broad shoulders, gray streak in his beard, same hard-set eyes Joshua remembered from Helmand Province. When Isaac looked up, recognition cut through the years instantly. "Bloody hell. Joshua Klene." He stood, grinning. "I thought you were dead or married." Joshua managed a small smile. "Neither. Still driving cars." They shook hands, the kind of grip that spoke history, shared danger, shared silence. Over 2 pints, Joshua laid out what had happened, the call, the letter, the threats tied to Davenport. Isaac listened, frown deepening. "Prince's Gate," he muttered finally. "Not many know about that op anymore." "Exactly," Joshua said. "Whoever this is, they've done their homework." Isaac's voice dropped lower. "You heard about Mac and Hollis?" Joshua's eyes flicked up. "No. What about them?" "Missing," Isaac said flatly. "Last month. Hollis vanished from a job site in Morocco. Mac's place in Liverpool's been empty for weeks. No word, no trace. Their bank accounts frozen, phones off-grid. And you're telling me someone's taunting you about Prince's Gate." Joshua's jaw tightened. "You think it's connected?" Isaac took a long drink. "You bet your arse it is." Later that day, Joshua met Clark Davenport at his penthouse office. The CEO was pacing, suit jacket off, tie loosened. "Joshua, what the hell's going on? My board is spooked. I've been getting emails, threats, encrypted messages. Someone sent me a photo of my wife outside her son's school." Joshua stood still, his tone calm, but deliberate. "Sir, I believe you're being targeted because of me." Clark blinked. "Because of you?" "Joshua, you're my driver. My friend, yes, but this isn't about you. It's about my contracts." Joshua shook his head. "It's both. Whoever's doing this knows about my past." They referenced a classified SAS operation from 1980. "They want something from you, but they're using me as leverage." Clark stared, disbelief warring with fear. "You're saying this is military?" Joshua met his gaze. "Private military. Name's Drew Peterson. Former operator. He runs a company called Aegis Line Security. They're ex-contractors turned mercenaries. He's been picking up dirty jobs, extraction, sabotage, high-value intimidation." Clark's voice wavered. "How do you know this?" "I made a few calls this morning, and one of my old contacts in the regiment confirmed Peterson's crew has been sighted in London. 3 of my teammates are already missing. He's tying up loose ends." Clark sank into his chair, rubbing his forehead. "My God." Joshua stepped closer, his voice lowering. "Mr. Davenport, I need you to authorize changes in your security. No publicity, no police leaks. From this point, we treat every movement as compromised. You move only in my vehicle. Your calendar is need to know. Your family gets private protection immediately." Clark looked up. "Joshua, if this is as bad as it sounds, we need government help. Witness protection, MI5. Joshua shook his head. "No, sir. The moment we call them, it's paperwork, red tape, and exposure. Peterson will vanish before they even draft an operation brief." Clark frowned. "So what do we do?" Joshua's eyes hardened. "We prepare." That night, Joshua was back in his flat, assembling his old world piece by piece. He laid out his field knife, service pistol, encrypted comm unit, and the folded map of London with hand-drawn circles marking choke points. The kettle boiled behind him, the whistle shrill in the quiet. He poured tea absently, mind racing through contingencies. He opened his contacts list and scrolled to two familiar names, Isaac Cole and Jerry Callow. He called Isaac first. I'm putting something together. Quiet, unofficial. I'll need your eyes on surveillance. You still have your drone rig? Isaac grunted. Of course I do. What's the plan? Clark's security detail gets an overhaul. We're building a defense grid around his movements. I want every camera feed, every angle, every blind spot covered. And Jerry? Isaac asked. I'll bring him in once we confirm he's back from Africa. If he's alive. A pause. Then Isaac said quietly, You think this Peterson's coming after you personally? Joshua's voice was steady. I think he's already started. By morning, Davenport Tower felt subtly different. Joshua's presence changed the rhythm of the building. Guards repositioned, cameras redirected, access cards restricted. Every corridor had new eyes. Every elevator had a hidden sensor. Clark's assistant, Miranda, noticed. What's with the new scanners and code locks, Mr. Klene? We upgrading. Joshua smiled faintly. Something like that. He spent the next hours walking Clark through discreet safety protocols, switching routes, using decoy vehicles, limiting digital communication. Clark followed, uncertain but trusting. At one point, Clark stopped at the window overlooking London's skyline. You really think they'll come for me? Joshua stood beside him, eyes scanning the streets below. They won't have to. They'll come for me first. That's the only way to reach you. Clark turned, unsettled. And if they do, Joshua's gaze didn't waver. Then we make sure they regret it. That evening, Joshua parked the Bentley outside Clark's mansion, the air crisp and still. He did one final sweep of the perimeter, sensors quietly transmitting data to Isaac's encrypted laptop feed. Everything was in motion now, a web tightening, unseen. As he climbed back into the car, his phone buzzed with a new message. No number, just text. You can't save them all, Sergeant Major. Joshua deleted it without hesitation, eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. He knew then what this really was. Not a threat, a hunt. And the hunters had already chosen their prey. Chapter 3, The Trap. Rain hammered against the city skyline as dawn broke, a steel-colored morning over London that promised no peace. The Bentley's wipers moved in rhythm, slicing water from the windshield. Inside, Joshua Klene's reflection looked back at him, jaw tight, eyes cold, mind calculating. The hotel stood ahead like a fortress in glass and marble. The Langbridge, 5-star and discreet, known for high-end investors and political clientele. On paper, it was the venue for Clark Davenport's quarterly investor meeting. In reality, it was bait, the perfect stage for the enemy to reveal themselves. Joshua had designed the trap himself. Inside the service corridor, Isaac Cole adjusted a small earpiece and muttered into his mic, Camera 3 is online. Perimeter secured. Got 2 unmarked vans parked across the street. Windows tinted, no plates. Joshua's voice came through steady and clipped. Copy that. Keep eyes on them, but don't engage. We wait. In the ballroom upstairs, technicians in suits prepared presentation screens and placed name cards on tables. The place smelled of coffee, electronics, and nervous anticipation. To anyone else, it was just another corporate event. But to Joshua, every inch of it was a potential battleground. Jerry Callow, broad-shouldered and rougher around the edges than either Joshua or Isaac, was setting a briefcase under the central table. He flipped the latch, revealing a tangle of wires and compact metal boxes. You sure you want these here? He asked. Joshua knelt beside him, eyes scanning the setup. They're not explosives, just noise jammers. If Peterson's men try to use comms, their signals will fry. Jerry gave a crooked grin. Old school. I like it. Joshua looked at him sharply. We're not here for blood. Not yet. Jerry chuckled under his breath. You always did prefer the quiet way, boss. Quiet wins, Joshua said simply. At 8:30 a.m., Clark Davenport arrived, flanked by his personal assistant Miranda and a nervous PR director. He looked pale, exhausted, still unaccustomed to living inside an invisible war. Joshua, he said as they met in the hallway, is this really necessary? There are journalists here, potential partners, sir, Joshua interrupted, voice low. It's necessary. Everything here is under control. Just do your presentation, keep to the plan, and no one will know anything's different. Clark sighed, tugging at his cufflinks. I'm trusting you, Joshua. You always can, sir. By mid-morning, the ballroom buzzed with chatter. Suits mingled, hands shook, coffee cups clinked. Joshua moved among them like a shadow, discreet but always watching. His earpiece crackled, Isaac's voice again. 2 hostiles confirmed. Moving in through staff entrance, posing as maintenance. Copy, Joshua murmured. Let them get comfortable. He adjusted his tie, nodding politely to a passing investor, and made his way to the back corridor. Through a slightly ajar service door, he glimpsed 2 men in gray coveralls pushing a cart marked equipment testing. Their walk was wrong, too controlled, too coordinated. Joshua ducked behind a column and spoke quietly. Jerry, position 3. Now. Jerry's reply was immediate. On it. From the mezzanine above, Jerry raised a camera lens disguised as a conference microphone. Got eyes, he said, both carrying sidearms under their jackets. They're not here to fix the lights. Joshua's mind worked fast. Peterson's men were testing the perimeter, probing, not striking, which meant more were coming. Isaac, Joshua said, trace the vans. Already did. One's registered to a shell company in Amsterdam. The other? Nothing. Could be Peterson's transport or extraction unit. Keep a tail drone ready. If they move, I want to know before they turn the ignition. Copy that. At 10:00 sharp, Clark began his presentation. The lights dimmed, the projector hummed, and the first slide appeared. Joshua stood at the back wall near the emergency exit, pretending to scan the crowd casually, though his every sense was dialed to high alert. Then he saw it, a flicker of movement near the catering station. A man in a black waiter's vest carrying a tray, moving against the flow. Joshua's hand twitched toward the weapon under his jacket. Isaac, he whispered, check the caterer on the left flank. I see him, Isaac replied. Facial match. Adam Rourke, ex-Royal Marines. Worked for Aegis Line last year. Joshua's blood ran cold. That's Peterson's man. Confirmed. Jerry's voice joined in. You want me to take him? Negative. Not yet. Let's see who else bites. The man drifted through the room, setting down empty glasses, eyes sweeping the exits. Then he touched his ear, a subtle tap, but enough for Joshua to know. They're coordinating, Joshua said under his breath. Peterson's team is inside the net. Clark's voice echoed faintly through the speakers. And as we project our next fiscal quarter, sir, Joshua interrupted softly from the side of the stage. You're going to cut it short in 10 minutes. No questions, no press. Understood. Clark gave a faint nod, still talking smoothly to the audience. Joshua returned to the corridor and keyed the mic. All stations on alert. They're inside. Isaac's feed came alive with static, then stabilized. Vans are repositioning. Back entrance is covered. We're boxed in. Jerry cursed. Perfect. Exactly what we wanted. Stay calm, Joshua said. They think we're the prey. Minutes later, the first sign of tension broke the illusion of normalcy. One of the fake maintenance men slipped into the control booth and began fiddling with the lighting console. The lights flickered once, then stabilized. To anyone else, a minor glitch. To Joshua, confirmation. He moved in silently, entering through the side stairwell. The hum of the projector masked his footsteps. When he reached the booth, he found a man hunched over the wiring panel, a comm piece tucked under his collar. Joshua's voice was low and lethal. Step away from the controls. The man froze, half-turning. Maintenance, he said weakly. Joshua's hand shot forward, pressing the muzzle of his suppressed pistol under the man's ribs. Wrong kind of maintenance. Who the hell? Answer me. Who's your handler? The man hesitated too long. Joshua struck him once across the jaw, sending him crashing into the console. The lights flickered again. Below, Clark's speech stumbled mid-sentence. Jerry's voice came through sharp. Lights just flashed twice. What's happening? Extraction confirmed, Joshua replied. They're marking targets. They'll move within 10 minutes. He hauled the unconscious man into the corner, and bound his wrists with cable ties. Isaac shut down external comms. Already done. By the time Clark ended his presentation and the applause started, Joshua's trap was fully sprung. Every exit had a countermeasure. Every potential shooter had been marked. Jerry whispered over comms. They're getting nervous. The fake waiter's signaling his partner near the elevators. They don't like being blind. Good, Joshua said quietly. That means they'll make a mistake. The doors at the far end of the ballroom opened. 3 men in suits stepped in, scanning the crowd. Their formation was textbook tactical. Isaac's voice was calm but urgent. Peterson's team. Confirmed IDs. They're armed. Joshua's eyes narrowed. He could almost feel the temperature in the room drop. Positions. Don't engage unless fired upon. Let them come closer. Clark was shaking hands with investors, smiling for photos. Oblivious. Jerry muttered. You planning to tell him? Not yet, Joshua replied. If we play this right, we end it before he even knows. The 3 men moved closer, weaving through the crowd. One reached into his jacket. Hold, Joshua whispered. The man pulled out a phone, checked a message, then nodded to the other 2. They turned toward the elevators and left the ballroom. Isaac exhaled. They're pulling back. They know we're watching. Joshua's voice was calm but cold. Then the trap worked. As the crowd began to disperse, Joshua stood near the entrance, scanning the corridor one last time. The unconscious infiltrator had been quietly taken out by Jerry under cover of routine staff change. The vans outside were gone, their tracks already lost in the rain. Clark approached, adjusting his cufflinks again. Joshua, everything all right? You look like you've just defused a bomb. Joshua gave a thin smile. Something like that, sir. Clark frowned. You'll tell me what's going on eventually, won't you? Joshua met his eyes. When it's safe to. He turned away, scanning the windows as a shadow crossed the far building. A reflection, maybe, or a watcher. The meeting had ended without blood, but Joshua knew this wasn't victory. It was reconnaissance. Peterson's men had tested the cage and found it strong. Next time, they'd come harder. But for now, the trap was set, and they knew exactly who they were up against. Chapter 4, Blood and Bullets. The first explosion ripped through the hotel's east loading dock at 9:14 a.m. The shockwave rolled through the marble floors of the Lang Bridge, shattering glass and flipping tables in the lobby. Screams tore through the air. Fire alarms blared. The smell of burning insulation and gunpowder filled the corridors. Joshua Klene didn't flinch. He was already moving. From a mezzanine above the ballroom, he shouted into his earpiece, Isaac, report. Isaac's voice came through, steady despite the chaos. East dock's gone. 2 vans blew through the service entrance. Hostiles in tactical gear, 15, maybe 20. Jerry's voice followed, gruff and urgent. They're moving toward the ballroom. They've got rifles, flashbangs, and attitude. Joshua adjusted his comms. Then let's make them regret it. Below him, Clark Davenport stumbled out of a meeting room, clutching his briefcase like a lifeline. His face was pale, his voice panicked. What's happening? My God, was that a bomb? Joshua descended the staircase 2 steps at a time, eyes already scanning angles and sight lines. Sir, stay with me. Don't stop, don't ask questions. Move now. Clark hesitated, trembling. We should call the police. They'll arrive in 10 minutes. Peterson's men will kill us in 5. Joshua snapped. Now go. He shoved Clark toward the staff corridor as a second explosion shook the floor, smaller, controlled, likely a breaching charge. The ornate chandelier above the ballroom shattered into a rain of crystal. In the hotel's underground corridor, Isaac met them at the junction, rifle slung low, face streaked with dust. They're coming in hard, boss. 30 meters and closing. Joshua's voice was calm, surgical. We funnel them through the banquet wing. Jerry, seal the north hallway. I'll hold the main. Jerry's reply came through between bursts of gunfire. Already on it. Dropping the blast doors. Clark stumbled behind Joshua, breathing hard. Who are these people? What do they want? Joshua kept his eyes on the hallway. They want you. To get to me. What does that mean? It means, Joshua said, chambering around. They made the worst possible mistake. The first squad of attackers breached the banquet corridor. black uniforms, helmets, laser sights cutting through the haze. They advanced with confidence, clearing corners by the book, but this wasn't a battlefield they knew. Joshua had turned the corridor into a death trap. He knelt behind a fallen marble column, timed their footfalls, then tossed a smoke grenade down the hall. The thick gray cloud ballooned instantly. Confused shouts echoed. "Smoke! Left flank!" That's when Joshua moved, silent and precise. 2 rounds snapped from his suppressed rifle. The first man dropped. The second spun and fired wildly, hitting a wall sconce instead of flesh. Isaac's voice crackled over comms. "Nice and tidy, just how we like it." Joshua reloaded, eyes sharp. "Keep your sector clean." Jerry, status: North corridor sealed. 2 tangos down. But we've got movement near the kitchen elevators, maybe a flanking unit. Copy. Hold them there. Clark pressed himself against the wall, trembling. "Joshua, I can't do this. I'm not built for this." Joshua turned, gripping him by the shoulders, eyes hard. "Sir, listen to me. You can do this. You're going to follow my voice and nothing else." "Understood." Clark nodded weakly. "Good. Keep low. Move when I tell you. Don't stop for anything." He shoved Clark ahead, just as a burst of automatic fire tore through the far wall, showering them with plaster dust. Joshua pivoted, fired twice, and another attacker collapsed behind the smoke. Isaac's voice came again. "Hostiles breaching second-floor stairwell. They've split into 2 teams, probably going for the conference room and control center." Joshua's mind raced. "They want to trap us. Don't let them get control of the elevators." "Too late," Isaac said grimly. "They're hacking the access system. Then lock the mechanical override." "Already on it." Joshua guided Clark down a narrow maintenance hallway, one of the escape routes he'd mapped 2 days ago. Pipes lined the ceiling, steam hissing through cracks. "We go through here," he said. Clark hesitated, glancing at the damp corridor. "This leads where?" "Sub-basement garage. Our fallback extraction point." Behind them, Jerry's voice boomed over the comms. "Boss, you might want to hurry. They brought toys. I just saw a bloody drone with thermal optics." Joshua exhaled sharply. "That's Peterson's style. Tech over tactics." Isaac's dry laugh came through. "Then let's show him what real tactics look like." Upstairs, Peterson's voice echoed faintly through the attacker's comm channel Isaac had tapped. Cold, composed, professional. "Confirm Davenport's location. Engage the driver, if visual. Kill him clean. He's SAS, don't play hero." Isaac relayed the feed to Joshua. Joshua's lips tightened. "He remembers me, then?" "Boss," Jerry said, reloading, "I say we return the favor." "Not yet. First, we get Clark out." They reached the sub-basement stairwell. The hum of generators filled the air. Joshua paused, scanning for movement. Something wasn't right. "Hold," he murmured. He stepped forward, crouching to inspect the floor. A thin red wire glinted under the light. Trip laser. Improvised explosive, crude but deadly. "Trap," he said. "Back." Clark froze, wide-eyed. "A bomb." Joshua gave a small nod. "Nothing we can't handle." From his vest, he pulled a compact mirror and angled it toward the doorway, spotting the device tucked inside a cleaning cart, wired to a proximity sensor. Jerry's voice crackled. "Need me down there?" "Negative. I've got it." He clipped the wire cleanly and pulled the detonator free. The LED light faded. "Safe," he said quietly. "Move." As they entered the underground parking, the echoes of combat above grew distant, replaced by the mechanical hum of ventilation fans. Isaac's drone feed appeared on Joshua's wrist tablet. Multiple heat signatures closing in on their location. "3 on your 6, Isaac warned. Joshua turned sharply, aiming down the tunnel. Jerry cut their path. A second later, a muffled blast shook the ceiling, Jerry's remote charge detonating near the freight shaft. "Blocked," Jerry said cheerfully. "They'll have to dig through concrete to follow that." Joshua smirked. "Nice work." Clark winced at the sound. "How many of them are there?" "Enough," Joshua replied, "but fewer every minute." They reached the Bentley, parked in the dim light of the garage. It was riddled with dust, but still pristine, armor-plated and fueled. "Get in," Joshua ordered. Clark slid into the back seat, trembling. Are we leaving? Not yet. Joshua keyed his comms. Isaac, Jerry, fall back to my signal. A pause. Then Jerry's voice came. Copy. We're on the service lift. 30 seconds. Gunfire echoed from above. Isaac grunted. They're trying to cut us off. They've got thermal vision. They can see through the smoke. Joshua scanned the ramp entrance. Then blind them. Gladly. A moment later, the feed flared. Isaac's EMP grenade discharging, plunging the upper floors into digital darkness. Lights out, Isaac said. Joshua smiled faintly. Perfect. Moments later, Jerry and Isaac appeared through the service door, both panting, weapons low. Jerry grinned despite the soot covering his face. Miss me? Every second, Joshua said dryly. They piled into the car. Joshua started the engine, headlights off. We're not escaping, he said. We're repositioning. If Peterson thinks we're running, he'll commit more men. That's when we hit back. Clark leaned forward. Hit back? You mean fight them? Joshua's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. No, sir. In them. The rumble of approaching vehicles echoed from the ramp. Isaac checked his rifle. Contact in 30 seconds. Joshua steered the car deeper into the garage, past the maintenance zone. Jerry, prep the fallback plan. The charges under the support beams ready? Ready. Good. We'll give them a welcome they won't forget. The first SUV roared down the ramp, headlights cutting through the dark. Armed men poured out, shouting. Joshua whispered into his mic, now. Jerry hit the remote detonator. The ground shook. A section of the ceiling collapsed, crushing the lead vehicle under concrete and flame. The rest of the attackers dove for cover. Isaac opened fire from the far column, controlled bursts. They're pinned. Joshua moved like a ghost through the chaos, flanking left, firing with surgical precision. Each shot was a decision, clean, efficient, necessary. Clark crouched inside the Bentley, eyes wide, hands over his ears as bullets cracked against the armor plating. Stay down, Joshua shouted, voice cutting through the din. Minutes stretched like hours. Smoke filled the garage. One by one, the attackers fell or fled. When silence finally settled, Joshua's team emerged from the haze, alive, unbroken. Clark stumbled out, coughing. Is it over? Joshua looked toward the smoking wreckage, the fire reflecting in his cold blue eyes. No, sir, he said quietly. This was only their first move. He holstered his weapon, scanning the bodies. Every instinct told him the same thing. Peterson's assault wasn't about killing. It was about testing. And now, the test was over. Joshua had passed. Chapter 5, Hunter and Hunted. The storm hadn't passed. It had only grown teeth. At 10:07 a.m., barely 15 minutes after the firefight in the underground garage, Joshua Klene watched the security monitors flicker to life again. The hotel's emergency power had kicked in, and with it came the unmistakable sound of engines, heavier, angrier, more deliberate this time. They're not retreating, Isaac muttered beside him, peering through a cracked monitor. They're regrouping. Jerry checked the feed from a drone they'd hijacked minutes earlier. On screen, black SUVs and armored trucks swarmed the streets around the Lang Bridge. Looks like Peterson called for the cavalry, he said grimly. At least 40 more, maybe more. And, he squinted, zooming in on the footage. They got air toys now. I see a small bird, maybe a drone helicopter with a mounted camera. Joshua exhaled slowly, scanning the map spread across the security desk. He's escalating faster than I expected. That means he's worried. Clark Davenport stood a few steps behind them, shaken but trying to compose himself. His once pristine suit was smudged with dust and gunpowder. Worried? Joshua, he's bringing an army. Joshua turned toward him. Armies can be broken, sir, especially when they don't know they're walking into a kill box. Clark swallowed hard. You plan for this? I plan for everything, Joshua said. And right now, we're going to make them wish they'd stayed home. The hotel's top 3 floors became their fortress. Joshua coordinated with Isaac and Jerry, like a conductor leading an orchestra of chaos. Tripwires stretched across hallways disguised by shadows and debris. Claymore mines, improvised from shaped charges and kitchen equipment, were mounted behind overturned furniture. Isaac manned overwatch from the penthouse balcony, a sniper rifle balanced on a table once meant for champagne glasses. Target zones are set, Isaac reported. I've got eyes on the Main Street approach. Once they breach, I'll start thinning the herd. Copy that, Joshua said. Jerry, status on the side access points? Jerry's voice came through with his usual dry humor. All sealed tighter than a banker's conscience. If they want in, they'll have to blow it, and that's when my little surprises go off. Joshua smirked. That's what I like to hear. He checked his watch. The timing mattered. Peterson's style was methodical. He'd send in reconnaissance before committing his main force. Joshua needed to break that rhythm, make him question his control. Let's flip the board, Joshua muttered. Outside, Peterson stood in a mobile command van surrounded by monitors. His tactical vest was pristine, his expression calm but tight. Thermal shows 3 hostiles inside the structure, one of his men said. We can flush them out with tear gas, or no. Peterson cut him off. We don't flush SAS men out. We contain them, push them into our guns. He turned toward the live feed from the helicopter drone. Deploy teams Alpha and Bravo from the west and south. Cut their exits. Air unit, keep eyes on upper floors. I want eyes on the chauffeur. The operator nodded. Understood. Back inside, Joshua watched the drone on Isaac's screen, tracing its pattern. That drone's feeding him everything. Time to clip its wings. Isaac grinned. Say no more. He slotted a magazine of armor-piercing rounds, took a slow breath, and fired. The rifle cracked once. The drone burst into flames midair and spiraled into the street below. Bird down, Isaac reported. That'll make him blink. Joshua's voice was calm, but edged with iron. Then let's use that blink. Moments later, the first assault teams breached the hotel's western entrance. The glass doors exploded inward under a breaching charge. Shadows moved through smoke, rifles sweeping, lasers slicing through the dark. Alpha team entering ground floor. One of them reported over the comms. They didn't make it far. The moment the 4th man crossed the threshold, a tripwire detonated the first claymore. The blast tore through the corridor, shredding the front line. Screams echoed, followed by the thud of falling bodies. From the mezzanine above, Joshua whispered into his mic, "That's one." Jerry's voice came next, almost amused. They just hit the service stairs, too. I told you they'd take the bait. A muffled explosion shook the building again. Joshua smiled faintly. 2. Peterson slammed his fist on the table inside the van. They're using traps. They were ready for this. One of his lieutenants stammered, "Sir, we can pull back." "No." "You want me to pull back?" Peterson's jaw tightened. "We press harder. Call in the secondary unit. Tell them to breach from the roof." At the top of the hotel, Isaac spotted movement, figures rappelling from a helicopter hovering too close. "Boss, they're dropping it on my roof," he warned. Joshua's voice came steady. "Deal with them quietly." Isaac smirked. Quietly's relative. He waited, patient as a predator. The first attacker touched down, scanning the roof. Isaac fired once, dropping him instantly. The second panicked, firing blind. Isaac's second shot silenced him before the echo of the first had faded. 2 more came down together. That's when Isaac rolled a flashbang behind the ventilation duct. The explosion disoriented them, and he moved in close, finishing the job with precise, brutal efficiency. He pressed his mic again. "Roof secured. For down. No eyes on more birds." "Good work," Joshua said. In the control room, Clark clutched the radio nervously. "Joshua, how long can we hold them?" Joshua adjusted his weapon. "Long enough for them to realize they're not the hunters anymore." Clark frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Joshua said, moving to the next position, "it's time to take this fight outside." He signaled Jerry. "Trigger phase 2. Jerry grinned. He flipped a series of switches on a remote panel linked to charges they'd hidden during their prep. Across the street, 2 parked delivery trucks, seemingly abandoned, erupted in synchronized explosions, blocking the main road and cutting off Peterson's reinforcements. Isaac whistled. "That'll rattle his comms." Joshua nodded. "It'll do more than that. It'll force him to react." Down below, Peterson's command van shook from the shockwave. Static filled the radios. Sir, the main road's gone. Peterson's knuckles whitened on the table. He's drawing us in. He's turning the battlefield against us. Then, for the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. Back inside, Joshua led Clark through the service hallway toward a vantage point overlooking the street. Through the smoke and chaos below, they could see Peterson's men scattering, disoriented, unsure where the shots were coming from. See that? Joshua said quietly. That's what happens when they fight ghosts. Clark glanced at him, bewildered. Ghosts? Joshua adjusted his tie, a habit from calmer days. We were trained to disappear, sir, to watch from the dark. They think they're hunting us, but they're already in our sights. He turned back toward the hallway, voice firm. Isaac, Jerry, sweep sectors 3 through 6. No prisoners. Copy that, Isaac said. Understood, Jerry added. Let's clean the house. The next 10 minutes unfolded like a deadly ballet. Isaac moved along the rooftop edge, covering Jerry as he advanced through smoke-filled corridors. Each time Peterson's men regrouped, they were ambushed from above or behind, precision strikes, perfectly timed. Bullets cracked. Metal screamed. The hotel groaned under the weight of violence, but Joshua's voice stayed calm, directing every move. 2 more by the stairwell, Isaac reported. Both down. Jerry, check your flank. Already did, Jerry said, breathing hard. And he's not getting up again. They were outnumbered, but they had the advantage, experience, discipline, and an intimate understanding of chaos. By the time the smoke cleared, the bodies of Peterson's mercenaries littered the corridors. The survivors had fallen back outside, dragging their wounded, their confidence shattered. Peterson's van sat silent now. The air inside was heavy with failure. Pull them back, he ordered finally, voice low and cold. Regroup at safe distance. This isn't over. His lieutenant hesitated. Sir, they got Overwatch on us. I said pull them back. Outside, the surviving men withdrew under cover fire, leaving their dead behind. Inside the hotel, Joshua stood at the broken window, watching them retreat into the smoke. Clark stepped beside him, still trembling. You turned it around. You actually beat them. Joshua's eyes were distant, focused on the street below. No, he said softly. I taught them the difference between hunters and prey. He lowered his weapon, the adrenaline fading just enough for exhaustion to creep in. Jerry joined them, wiping sweat from his brow. They'll come again, boss. You know that. Joshua nodded. I'm counting on it. He turned to Isaac's voice crackling over the comms. Perimeter secure. We're clean, for now. Joshua exhaled, shoulders tight. Then we dig in, because next time, they'll come harder. He looked at the burning streets below, a chessboard of smoke, fire, and fallen men. Peterson had come hunting. But today, he learned the truth. Joshua Klene didn't run. He waited. And when he waited, the hunters died first. Chapter 6, Sins of the Past. The aftermath was quieter than the battle, but somehow heavier. By dawn, the smoke had settled around the Lang Bridge. Police barricades stretched down the street, but the authorities were deliberately kept at arm's length. Joshua and his team had already removed the evidence that mattered, the laptops, the dead men's radios, and the one prisoner who had survived the night. He sat now in a service room, wrists zip-tied to a chair, a deep cut above his brow and defiance in his eyes. Jerry stood nearby, arms folded, his expression carved from stone. Isaac leaned against the wall, holding a tablet. He's one of Peterson's second-tier handlers, he said. Name's Mark Helen, former Royal Marine. Went private, then went dark. Joshua stepped into the room, the morning light cutting across his face. His tone was low, almost conversational. Kellen, you know who I am? The man spat blood to the floor. You're the chauffeur. Joshua's mouth twitched faintly, a ghost of smile. That's on my jobs. My other is getting answers from men who think they're tough. Kellen sneered, but the slight tremor in his jaw betrayed him. You've got no jurisdiction. Joshua crouched in front of him, eyes level. I've got something better than jurisdiction. I've got time, and you've got information. He leaned closer. Where's Peterson? Kellen laughed, a hollow, nervous sound. You think I'd sell him out? You've no idea who you're dealing with. Joshua stood, turned to Jerry. Lock the door. Jerry kicked it shut and twisted the bolt. Joshua looked back at Kellen. You're right, he said softly. You won't sell him out. Not yet. He nodded to Isaac, who tapped on the tablet. The screen flickered, a feed from Kellen's own comms network. The encrypted drive they'd pulled from his vest had cracked an hour ago under Isaac's code-breaking skills. Now, the digital skeletons were laid bare. Contracts, payment trails, personnel files. Joshua turned the screen toward Kellen. These are your operations, he said. You handled recruitment for Peterson's network. You signed off on logistics for Black Ridge Holdings, Shadow Line Defense, and PX Tactical. That's not protection work. That's human trafficking under a private security label. Kellen's smirk faltered. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I do, Joshua said evenly. You pulled operators from old units, British, American, South African. Promised them work guarding diplomats or oil convoys. Then you sold them to proxy wars. Or worse, used them as cover for illegal arms shipments. He dropped the tablet on the table with a thud. And when they got too close to the truth, you sent them into dead missions. Kellen's silence said everything. Isaac's voice cut in, low and cold. 3 of our mates from the old days, Alan, Reese, Maddox. Remember them? They disappeared after taking Peterson's contracts. We found their names in your files. Kellen's face went pale. Joshua's voice darkened. They were your test cases, weren't they? Used them as shields, then reported them dead to collect the payout. Orders, Kellen muttered finally, voice cracking. Peterson handled the contracts. I didn't know. Don't lie to me, Joshua snapped. The sound cracked like thunder in the small room. He stepped closer until his shadow swallowed the man. You knew. You all knew. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the old ventilation system. Then Joshua said quietly, Where's Peterson running his current operation? Kellen hesitated. He's mobile. No fixed base. Uses shell offices, offshore banks, front companies. But he swallowed hard. He's got a hub in Prague. The data flow runs through a company called Ironbridge Analytics. It's where he cleans the money. Isaac was already typing, pulling up files. Confirmed. I see transfers from PX Tactical routed through Ironbridge into private crypto accounts. And, he frowned, multiple payments to a code name. Electo. Jerry frowned. Who's that? Joshua's face hardened. Greek mythology. One of the Furies, vengeance. Isaac nodded. And look here, each payment matches a mission where one of our old SAS operators was killed. The room went still. Jerry swore under his breath. So he was buying their deaths. Joshua stared at the screen, fury simmering behind calm eyes. He was cleaning house, killing anyone who knew the truth. 2 hours later, the team gathered in the hotel's now-cleared ballroom. The tables turned into a makeshift command post. Maps, screens, and notes littered the space. Joshua stood before a whiteboard marked with names and red circles. Peterson's lieutenants, the logistics officers, the middlemen. Peterson's not running a mercenary business, Joshua said. He's running a slaughterhouse. He recruits the broken, ex-soldiers, men with debt or guilt, promises them purpose, then sells them like assets. Those who resist, he eliminates. Clark sat quietly, pale but listening. This is monstrous. Joshua looked at him. It's profitable. He turned back to the board. We expose him. We cut off every limb before he can grow new ones. Jerry cracked his knuckles. What's the plan? Joshua's eyes were cold steel. We go hunting. That night, the hunt began. Jerry tracked one of Peterson's senior logistics men, a thin, nervous fixer named Collings, to a private airstrip outside the city. When Collings arrived aboard a jet, Joshua was waiting. He stepped out from the shadows as Collings fumbled for his pass. Evening, Joshua said quietly. Collings froze. Who are you? The man you helped kill 3 soldiers, Joshua replied. Collings tried to run. He made it 2 steps before Jerry's boot hit his knee, sending him sprawling. Joshua knelt beside him. Tell me about Ironbridge. Collings whimpered. Peterson handles the transfers. I just route the contracts, please. Joshua's tone didn't rise. Who's Electo? I don't know, Collings cried. Peterson. He uses that name himself sometimes. It's his code name on encrypted networks. He said it means justice. Joshua stood slowly, the name echoing in his head. Justice. That was what Peterson thought he was dealing out. Justice doesn't wear your colors, Joshua said quietly. Justice has a conscience. He motioned to Jerry. Call Isaac. Upload the files. Minutes later, Isaac's voice came over the comms. Got it. I'm pushing everything to mirrored servers and a contact in the cybercrimes unit. Once it's out there, the agencies can't ignore it. Good, Joshua said. Then let's send the next message. By dawn, the world began to turn against Peterson. Anonymous leaks appeared online. Documents exposing private security contracts tied to illegal arms deals, offshore accounts, and falsified mission logs. Journalists scrambled. Governments quietly panicked. Joshua watched from a hotel suite, the glow of multiple screens reflecting off his face. He's bleeding now, he murmured. Isaac sat beside him, sipping black coffee. You think this'll draw him out? Oh, it'll do more than that, Joshua said. Peterson's ego won't let him hide. He'll come to fix this himself. Jerry entered, holding a fresh set of encrypted phones. Just got confirmation. 3 of his lieutenants are missing. One turned up in a ditch outside Berlin. Another's running to Interpol for immunity. Perfect, Joshua said. They'll do our work for us. Clark looked uneasy. Joshua, when this ends, what happens to you? Joshua paused, eyes still on the screens. Depends on how many ghosts I have left to bury. That evening, they intercepted one more transmission from Peterson's network, a message routed through his dying command chain. Initiate containment. Eliminate liabilities. Recover Davenport at all costs. Joshua's expression didn't change. He's still chasing his payday. Isaac looked up. What now? Joshua holstered his weapon, his voice low. Now we finished the reckoning. He looked once more at the digital evidence. Names of men betrayed for profit, teammates he'd once called brothers. The faces burned into his memory. Peterson's empire was crumbling, but that wasn't enough. Not yet. He wanted the man himself. Joshua clenched his fists, every word dripping with quiet, controlled fury. He made soldiers into merchandise, he said. Used our training, our oaths, and turned them into currency. Now he gets to see what that costs. Outside, thunder rolled over the city, distant, rumbling, inevitable. The first storm had been Peterson's. The next one would be Joshua's. Chapter 7, The Reckoning begins. Rain hammered the city like it was trying to wash the sins off the streets. Joshua watched from the upper floor of the safe house, an old converted warehouse overlooking the river, as lightning cut the skyline into fragments. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. Older, harder, the lines around his eyes etched deeper since this began. Behind him, Isaac's laptop hummed quietly on the table, cycling through encrypted feeds. Jerry was cleaning his weapon, every movement deliberate, mechanical. Clark paced near the far wall, his phone vibrating again and again with messages he didn't want to read. Then Isaac's voice broke the silence. Joshua, you'd better see this. Joshua turned. On Isaac's screen, a video feed was open, grainy but clear enough. A man sat bound to a chair, bruised and bleeding. Behind him stood one of Peterson's enforcers, masked and armed. Clark's face drained of color. That's my COO, Daniel. Isaac's jaw tightened. They're broadcasting this to your company servers. Peterson wants everyone to see. The masked man on screen stepped forward, holding up a phone. Joshua Davenport, he said, voice distorted. You've made powerful enemies. You took something that wasn't yours. You got 24 hours to return yourself, or we start killing them, one by one. The camera shifted, showing more hostages. Joshua's chest tightened as he saw the last 2 faces, his ex-wife, Sarah, and his teenage son, Michael. Clark turned toward him, horrified. Joshua, that's your... I see them, Joshua said flatly, though his voice trembled just beneath the surface. The broadcast ended. Silence filled the room, broken only by the rain pounding against the windows. Jerry swore under his breath. He's crossing lines now. Family, civilians, that's desperation. Joshua said nothing. He stared at the dark screen, jaw working, the veins in his neck taut. Finally, he spoke. Where did the signal come from? Isaac began typing furiously. Multiple proxy servers, but I'm tracing the live feed's relay point. He can't hide his origin completely. Clark rubbed his temples, pacing faster. Joshua, we can't risk it. Peterson's gone feral. He'll kill them just to hurt you. Joshua turned toward him, his tone like cold steel. He won't kill them. Not yet. They're leverage, which means he wants me alive, at least until he believes he's won. Jerry looked up. So what's the play? Joshua drew a deep breath. We give him what he wants. Isaac stopped typing. You can't be serious. Joshua nodded. If I walk into his hands, he'll think he's got control. That's when we turn it. Clark shook his head. You're talking suicide. Not if you trust me, Joshua said quietly. And not if Isaac's trace works. For hours later, the plan was in motion. Joshua stood in the back of a black SUV under the overhang of an abandoned shipping terminal. He was dressed in plain clothes, no weapons visible, no armor, just the faint glint of a comm device behind his ear. Rain slicked his hair to his forehead. Jerry stood beside him, arms folded. You don't look like a man surrendering, he muttered. I'm not, Joshua said. I'm just letting him think I am. Isaac's voice came through the comm, signal confirmed. Peterson's base is about 15 clicks east, an old textile warehouse he's repurposed as a black site. We're running silent drones overhead, no visible presence. You've got 3 teams of law enforcement on standby, waiting for the green light. Clark stepped forward, holding a phone. I told him you come alone. He bought it. Joshua gave a single nod. Then we're right where we need to be. He looked at Jerry. Keep your men in motion. If he tries to relocate the hostages, you intercept. Jerry's grin was humorless. Understood. Joshua opened the SUV door and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit him like a slap, but it grounded him, reminded him who he was. SAS. Operator. Survivor. He walked into the open lot, lit by the harsh glow of floodlights. Across the distance, Peterson's convoy appeared, black sedans and armored vans rolling to a halt. The lead door opened, and Peterson himself stepped out, dressed in a tailored coat, umbrella in hand, his smug smile cutting through the storm. Joshua Davenport, Peterson called. The ghost himself. You should have stayed retired. Joshua stopped 10 paces away. You're running out of men to hide behind. Peterson chuckled. Oh, I have plenty left, and more than enough to end you. He gestured behind him. The van doors opened, revealing the bound hostages. Sarah, Michael, Daniel alive, terrified. Peterson's grin widened. There they are. One wrong move, and they die first. Joshua raised his hands slowly. You've made your point. I'm here. Let them go. Not yet, Peterson said, stepping closer. When I have unfinished business. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face, and for a moment, Joshua saw the madness there. Greed, arrogance, and fear all twisted into one expression. You should have taken the deal when I offered it, Peterson said. You could have had a fortune. Instead, you chose righteousness. Joshua's tone was steady, but there was venom in it. You call what you did business? You've sold soldiers into meat markets. You killed men who trusted you. You made profit out of loyalty. Peterson smirked. And you're still clinging to your moral code. Tell me, Joshua, does that keep you warm at night? Or just make you lonely? Joshua's eyes didn't waver. It keeps me human. In the earpiece, Isaac's whisper cut through. Joshua, we've got confirmation. The hostages, they're not real time. Those feeds are pre-recorded. We've got Sarah, Michael, and the others in protective custody. Peterson's bluffing. Joshua's pulse steadied. Copy that, he murmured under his breath. Peterson frowned. What was that? Joshua lowered his hands, taking a step closer. You made one mistake. Oh, you thought you were the only one setting traps. At that moment, Isaac's signal flared across the comms. The floodlights around the compound flickered, then went dark. A half-second later, tactical drones cut through the rain, silent and fast, feeding infrared images to law enforcement teams moving in. Peterson spun, shouting to his men. Lights! Get the lights back! Jerry's voice came over the open channel. "All units move." Gunfire erupted from the flanks. The air filled with the thunder of suppressed rifles and the crack of breaking glass. Peterson's men scattered, returning fire wildly into the darkness. Joshua ducked behind a truck, rolling beneath it as bullets sparked against the metal. He came up behind a fallen guard, grabbed his weapon, and advanced low and fast toward the main van. Peterson, caught between chaos and disbelief, shouted into his radio. "Fall back. Regroup at Sector 2. Too late." Police floodlights blazed to life, surrounding the compound. A voice thundered over a loudspeaker. "This is the Metropolitan Tactical Response Unit. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately." Peterson's eyes went wide. No, this isn't." Joshua stepped from the shadows, rifle steady. "It's over, Peterson." Peterson raised his pistol, but his hand trembled. "You can't prove anything." Joshua nodded toward the flashing lights beyond the fence. "We already did. Every file, every name, every account, it's all in their hands now. You're finished." For a moment, Peterson's facade cracked, pure rage twisting his face. Then, with a desperate yell, he fired. Joshua dropped low, the shot missing by inches. His return burst hit Peterson in the shoulder, spinning him backward onto the wet pavement. He approached slowly, rifle still trained. "You don't get to vanish into the dark, Peterson. Not like the men you sold." Peterson coughed, clutching his wound. "You think this changes anything? There's always another me. Another game." Joshua lowered the rifle slightly, eyes cold. "Maybe, but not today." He turned as law enforcement teams swarmed the yard, shouting orders, cuffing survivors. Rain hissed against the asphalt, washing away the last traces of gunpowder. Isaac's voice came over comms. "Hostages secure." Peterson's network just flatlined. Every major shell company locked down. Jerry's laugh was grim. "And the bastards finally in cuffs." Joshua exhaled slowly. The fight was ending, or at least this part of it was. He looked at Peterson, bleeding and beaten under the flashing blue lights. "You thought you could buy loyalty. Turns out, you can't buy truth." As the officers led Peterson away, Joshua turned to the rain-soaked skyline, the storm easing at last. The reckoning had begun. Chapter 8, Justice Served. Morning broke gray and heavy over the city. The rain that had soaked the streets the night before was gone, leaving the air cool and still, the kind of morning that felt like an exhale after too long holding one's breath. Inside the Federal Operations Command Center, Joshua stood by a tall window, watching the sun bleed through the mist as armored vans rolled past below. Peterson was in one of them, shackled, head bowed. The man who'd once terrorized governments and sold lives for profit now looked small, stripped of power, stripped of menace. "Hard to believe he's really in custody," Jerry said behind him, rubbing the back of his neck. "After all the bodies he stacked, all the times he slipped the net. Thought he'd die in a hole somewhere before anyone ever put cuffs on him." Joshua didn't turn around. He's too arrogant to die hiding. He wanted to make a statement. That's what got him caught. Isaac was hunched over a terminal nearby, transferring files onto a secured hard drive. "Statement or not, we've got everything. Intercepted comms, money trails, shell corporations, weapons contracts, all of it." He tapped a key and leaned back. "Federal prosecutors are going to eat this alive." Clark Davenport, dressed in a perfectly pressed gray suit despite the sleepless night, approached with 2 federal agents in tow. His tone was composed, but there was weariness behind it. "They're moving Peterson to a classified facility upstate. No trial in the public eye. They'll handle this one quietly." Jerry frowned. Quietly? After all he's done, he deserves to be paraded through the streets. Clark's gaze shifted toward him. He deserves to be neutralized. Whether that happens in front of cameras or behind bars doesn't change the result. Joshua turned from the window finally, his expression unreadable. "What about his men?" One of the agents spoke up. "Most are in custody. A few tried to fight. They didn't make it. We're still sorting through who acted under orders and who volunteered." Joshua nodded slightly, then looked at Clark. "Your call, Mr. Davenport. You're the one he targeted." Clark hesitated. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly. Not all of them were monsters. Some followed orders out of fear or desperation. The ones who weren't part of his inner circle, show them leniency. Jerry raised an eyebrow. Leniency? You serious? Clark nodded. Peterson ran them like slaves. We destroy the system, not the broken men caught in it. Joshua studied Clark for a moment. That's mercy. Clark met his gaze evenly. It's leadership. Isaac gave a small grunt of approval and began typing again. I'll make sure their names are tagged accordingly when I hand off the files. Later that morning, the team assembled in a secure briefing room for debrief. Coffee cups sat untouched on the table. A large monitor displayed a split-screen feed of two separate locations, one showing Peterson's transport convoy, the other showing digital confirmation of seized accounts lighting up in red. An agency director, mid-50s, square-shouldered, authoritative, stood at the head of the table. You three did excellent work. The operation's success saved not only lives, but exposed an international corruption chain that's been bleeding funds through shell firms for a decade. On behalf of the task force, you have our gratitude. Joshua, Isaac, and Jerry exchanged brief glances. Gratitude wasn't a word men like them ever grew comfortable with. The director continued. We've been authorized to extend reinstatement offers. Sergeant Major Klene, your record alone. Joshua cut in quietly. No, the room went still. The director blinked. No, I've served my time, Joshua said. I've buried enough men. My war ended a long time ago. Jerry smirked faintly. He means he's allergic to bureaucracy. The director sighed, then smiled slightly. Understood. Still, if you ever reconsider, I won't, Joshua said, not unkindly. Clark, seated at the far end of the table, spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Mr. Klene has my personal contract. Davenport Technologies owes him more than a medal or a government post. As long as he's under my employment, I know I'm safe. Isaac grinned. Guess that makes us his unofficial security detail. Clark returned the smile. Unofficial is fine. Sometimes the best protection is the kind that doesn't advertise itself. By midday, the group relocated to the operations floor, a wide, open space filled with screens showing live data feed from across Peterson's shattered network. Agents moved briskly between desks, securing evidence and processing digital seizures. Look at this, Isaac muttered, gesturing at one of the feeds. Offshore accounts collapsing in real time. That's billions frozen. Peterson's entire empire gone in less than 12 hours. Jerry let out a low whistle. Damn, never thought I'd see it. Joshua's attention lingered on one screen, showing a live aerial shot of the convoy transporting Peterson. The man sat motionless between two guards, face pale, an expression unreadable. Clark joined him. Do you ever feel sorry for men like him? Joshua shook his head slowly. No, but I understand them. The same instincts that made him dangerous made him effective once. The difference is he stopped believing in something bigger than himself. Clark folded his arms. And you still do? Joshua's eyes stayed on the screen. I believe in keeping people safe, even if they never know your name. Clark nodded thoughtfully. Then I'd say you've chosen the right life, Joshua. The formalities stretched into the afternoon. Signatures, statements, data verification, all the tedious machinery of justice grinding into motion. When it was done, Joshua stepped out into the courtyard outside the building, grateful for the quiet. The city was slowly returning to normal. Traffic hummed again. People hurried along the sidewalks, unaware of how close they'd come to chaos. Jerry joined him, lighting a cigarette and exhaling upward. So, Peterson's done. The team's back together. What now? Joshua glanced at him. You ever known me to plan that far ahead? Jerry chuckled. No, but it's worth asking. You could have taken that reinstatement, you know. Had rank again. Recognition. Joshua shook his head. Rank doesn't protect anyone. It just gives you permission to forget why you fight. Isaac walked out behind them, holding a tablet filled with encrypted data. I just got confirmation from the Federal Cyber Division. Everything's officially sealed. Peterson's done, his company's gone, his network disassembled. Clark followed a moment later, coat over his arm, expression lighter than Joshua had ever seen it. I've spoken with the board. Davenport Technologies is donating a portion of recovered funds to veterans' rehabilitation programs. In your name. Joshua blinked. My name. Clark smiled faintly. You save a lot of lives. It's the least we can do. Jerry clapped him on the shoulder. Looks like you're a charity now, boss. Isaac smirked. St. Joshua of the SAS. Patron of second chances. Joshua rolled his eyes, but there was a hint of smile. You two never change. No reason to start now, Jerry replied. They stood there a while in silence, the cool breeze tugging at their clothes. For the first time in weeks, Joshua felt the tension easing from his shoulders. No gunfire, no adrenaline. Just the quiet weight of completion. He glanced at the horizon, the clouds parting, sunlight breaking through the last gray shroud of the storm. Clark's voice was calm beside him. You ever miss it? The uniform? Joshua's answer was immediate. No, I miss the men. The purpose, but not the orders. Clark nodded. Then maybe it's time to find a new purpose. You've got the instincts of a protector. Use them where they matter. Joshua looked toward the skyline, where the world moved on without him, and said quietly, That's exactly what I intend to do. The wind shifted, carrying with it the distant sound of sirens, not of danger this time, but of cleanup. The echoes of war fading into background noise. Inside, agents continued dismantling what remained of Peterson's empire. Files were sealed, statements filed, and justice, imperfect though it always was, began to take shape. For Joshua, it wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about balance. About making sure men like Peterson never crawled out of the shadows again. He buttoned his coat, nodded to Clark, Isaac, and Jerry, and turned toward the exit. The day was moving forward, and so was he. Chapter 9, The New Normal. The city felt smaller now, quieter in the way that only months of careful rebuilding could make it. Sunlight slanted through the morning haze, catching the glass towers of downtown Davenport Technologies and refracting it into muted shards across the sidewalks. People moved about their routines, oblivious to the chaos that had threatened to tear their lives apart. Joshua Klene stood on the roof of a modest downtown building, a cup of black coffee warming his hands. The breeze tugged at his coat, carrying the faint scent of exhaust and wet asphalt. He let himself breathe in that ordinary world, letting it soak into his bones. It was peaceful, fragile, but real. Behind him, Isaac leaned against the railing, scanning a tablet for updates. Our new security protocols are holding up, he said. No breaches, no surprises. We're normal for once. Jerry came up the stairwell, shaking his head with a faint smile. Normal? That's a funny word for us. Feels like we just traded one kind of war for a slightly quieter one. Joshua took a slow sip of his coffee. Quiet doesn't mean safe, he said, but it does mean we can breathe without looking over our shoulders every 5 seconds. Clark Davenport emerged from the elevator lobby behind them, his usual immaculate suit slightly rumpled from a morning of meetings. I've been over the quarterly reports, he said, and the public relations team says our image is steadily recovering. Peterson's conviction helped. There's a sense of closure for the shareholders. Joshua glanced at him. Closure isn't the same as forgetting. Clark nodded. True, but it's the closest thing we can give the public. And to ourselves, perhaps. Inside the Davenport building, the team had established a modest office for their new protective services firm. Minimalist furniture, walls lined with screens showing security feeds, and a small conference table made the space functional but unpretentious. Isaac worked on one of the terminals, cross-referencing recent intel with ongoing assignments. It's strange, he murmured. We're doing everything right. Clients are happy, systems are secure. And yet, Joshua prompted, raising an eyebrow. Yet it doesn't feel like the old days, Isaac admitted. No adrenaline, no immediate threat. It's almost boring. Jerry snorted from his chair, spinning a pen between his fingers. Boring? That's a luxury, Isaac. You realize that? Most guys would kill for a day like this, paperwork instead of gunfire. Joshua smiled faintly, though his eyes were distant. Boring is the first step toward stability. Stability is the first step toward peace. Clark entered the office, holding a tablet and a cup of espresso. "Gentlemen, and Joshua," he said, offering a small grin, "I've got a new assignment. Low profile, executive transport, and security advisory for a high-level diplomatic client. Nothing flashy, just consistent vigilance. I trust you'll handle it." Joshua nodded. "Understood." Quiet, effective, and invisible. Clark's eyes lingered on him for a moment. "You've adapted well. I see the man you were and the man you've become. The balance seems right." Joshua said nothing, but the faintest line of acknowledgement crossed his lips. A few blocks away, Joshua was now driving Clark to an early morning meeting. The familiar hum of the engine, the precise handling of the car, and the orderly chaos of city traffic all felt grounding. His hands rested lightly on the wheel, eyes scanning constantly, trained instincts blending seamlessly with everyday routines. Clark broke the silence. "You're quiet today. Contemplating the world?" Joshua glanced at him in the rearview mirror, just noting that it still turns, and that we're still here to keep it from falling apart. Clark chuckled softly. "You always were practical, Joshua, even when the bullets were flying." Joshua's voice was low, measured. "Practical keeps you alive. Perspective keeps you human." The conversation faded, leaving only the sound of tires rolling over asphalt. Joshua's mind drifted briefly to the men lost along the way, teammates, operatives, innocents caught in the crossfire. Memories, sharp but distant, lined the edges of his consciousness. Later that week, the team conducted a training session on a secure lot outside the city. Isaac and Jerry ran through defensive maneuvers, checking gear, reviewing tactical procedures. Joshua watched, evaluating, correcting, adjusting. "You've changed the drills," Isaac said, slinging a practice weapon over his shoulder. "More emphasis on containment and extraction than offense. Makes sense for this scale." Joshua nodded. "We're not hunting anymore. We're preventing, containing, protecting." Jerry wiped sweat from his brow, laughing softly. "I miss the chaos sometimes. Not enough to risk it, but enough to feel alive." Joshua's eyes softened, just a fraction. "We remember the chaos, so we respect the calm. We don't need to chase it." They paused as a young recruit, part of Clark's protective detail program, approached, eager and nervous. "Sir," he said, voice quivering slightly, "how do you stay calm when everything is falling apart?" Joshua studied him for a moment. "You don't stay calm. You accept what you can control, and you act decisively. Everything else you let go." The recruit nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. That evening, Joshua returned to his apartment, a modest place overlooking a quiet side street. The lights of the city twinkled below, reflecting off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. He hung his coat, checked the small arsenal he kept for emergencies, always prepared, always vigilant, and poured himself a glass of water. He sat in the chair by the window, gazing out over the rooftops, thinking about the man he used to be. SAS sergeant, operator, soldier. The man who had stormed embassies, fought mercenaries, and faced death as a constant companion. That man was still inside him, but tempered now by months of reflection, loss, and cautious rebuilding. His phone buzzed, a message from Clark. "Meeting went well. Board satisfied. Keep watch." "See." Joshua set it aside, letting the normalcy of the moment fill the room. He allowed himself a rare smile. A faint knock at the door drew his attention. It was Jerry, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Figured you could use a caffeine infusion. Can't have the guardian of the city nodding off on the job." Joshua took the cup. "Thanks. For everything. For staying." Jerry leaned against the doorframe. "Always. But you know this life, quiet or not, it suits you. Not the medals, not the uniform. Just the work, the people you protect. That's what you need." Joshua nodded slowly. "I've learned that. The world doesn't need more soldiers. It needs more guardians." Isaac arrived a moment later, shaking his head. "Guardians, chauffeurs, shadow watchers. You've got quite the resume now, Joshua." Joshua chuckled softly. "And I wouldn't trade any of it. Every role taught me something. Every life saved reminded me why I stopped chasing glory and started chasing purpose." The next day, Joshua returned to his driver's seat, this time for a high-level client Clark had asked him to protect. The streets were calm, the city bustling in its usual rhythm. Traffic moved predictably. Pedestrians crossed carefully. The hum of the engine, the faint scent of leather, and the subtle vibration of the car beneath him, it all felt like home. He glanced in the rearview mirror at Clark, who was reviewing documents, unaware of the meticulous awareness Joshua maintained behind the wheel. Joshua adjusted the mirrors, checked intersections, and let his mind wander briefly, not to battles fought, not to ghosts, but to the life he now held. Orderly, deliberate, purposeful. He understood the balance between the man he had been and the man he was now. The soldier could remain in memory, but the chauffeur, the guardian, the sentinel, those were the roles he embraced every day. He exhaled, letting the ordinary sounds of the city settle over him, and a sense of calm washed over his shoulders like the long-awaited end of a storm. Joshua Klene, once a soldier in foreign sands and urban battlefields, now moved through quiet streets with the same discipline, the same watchful precision, and the same unspoken promise. He would protect those in his care, no matter what came next. And for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. Chapter 10, Resolutions and Costs. The morning sun filtered through the office blinds, painting long, gold stripes across the polished floor. The city outside moved with indifferent energy, 1,000 stories unfolding simultaneously, none of them aware of the battles fought, the lives saved, or the debts paid in quiet blood. Joshua Klene sat at his desk, hands clasped loosely, staring at a small, framed photograph. Alan Reese Maddox, names etched into memory, faces frozen in the last smiles he had seen. He hadn't cried in years, soldiers didn't cry, but he felt the weight of them in every muscle, every nerve ending. Their absence was a constant hum under his skin. Isaac tapped at his keyboard nearby, reviewing operational reports from the week. All secure. No incidents, no anomalies. Peterson's network is officially dismantled and all client assets accounted for. Joshua didn't respond immediately. Instead, he rose, moving to the small balcony outside. The wind was cool, carrying the faint scent of asphalt and exhaust from the street below. He inhaled deeply. They're gone, he murmured to himself. All of them. Jerry appeared quietly behind him, coffee in hand. You still do that? He asked softly. Talk to ghosts. Joshua didn't turn. Not talking. Remembering. Every day I wake up, they're part of the ledger. Part of what I protect the living from. Jerry handed him a cup. Then drink to them. Don't let the memories burn you. Joshua accepted the cup, letting the warmth seep into his hands. We save lives. That's the ledger too. But there's always a cost. The day passed in orderly fashion. Joshua moved through the office, checking in with his small protective detail, reviewing security measures, making minor adjustments. Clients felt reassured by the quiet confidence he exuded, never suspecting the depth of his vigilance, the unyielding calculations running behind those calm eyes. Around midday, Clark approached, a hint of curiosity in his expression. Joshua, you haven't taken a break in weeks. Are you ever going to step back and just breathe? Joshua's gaze didn't leave the monitors showing real-time feed from his team stationed across the city. Breathe when the world slows down. Until then, someone has to be aware. Someone has to be ready. Clark's brow furrowed. You're carrying too much alone. Joshua smiled faintly, almost humorless. I carry it differently now. Before, I fought because orders demanded it. Now, I fight because life demands it. The lives of those who can't defend themselves. Clark nodded silently. There was no arguing with a man who had reconciled purpose and duty, even at the cost of sleep, peace, and ease. Later, Joshua left the office and walked toward the fleet of vehicles he oversaw. His polished shoes clicked against the concrete, a rhythmic echo in the otherwise quiet garage. One by one, he inspected each car, checking tires, oil levels, comm systems, and defensive modifications, meticulous, precise, ritualistic. Isaac approached, carrying a small toolkit. Everything looks pristine. Even the armored sedan is spotless. Joshua ran a hand along the dashboard. Clean is not enough. It has to be ready. Always. Jerry leaned against a van, arms crossed. You ever wonder if we're overdoing it? Feels like we're preparing for the end of the world every day. Joshua glanced at him, eyes sharp. We prepare for the worst, so it never comes. That's what the dead taught us. That's why we honor them. Isaac tilted his head. Speaking of honoring, any particular way you're handling that today? Joshua paused, thinking back to late nights after missions, when he would tend small rituals, simple gestures only soldiers understood. A quiet nod to the sky, a cigarette lit in memory, a moment of silence in empty rooms. A moment at their favorite cafe, he said. Quiet, just us. Acknowledgement, not ceremony. Recognition. Jerry exhaled. You're not the type to hold a parade. That's respectable. Joshua allowed a brief smile. Parades are for victors. This is for remembrance. By afternoon, Joshua was behind the wheel of one of the sedans, dressed in a crisp, dark suit, tie perfectly aligned. The city moved past the windows in familiar patterns. A cyclist weaving through traffic, a delivery truck lumbering along, pedestrians hurrying under umbrellas. Isaac sat in the back seat, tablet in hand. All clear on your route. No anomalies detected. Joshua nodded. Good. Keep eyes on the comms. Any deviation, we adjust immediately. Jerry drove the support vehicle alongside, radio open, eyes scanning. You really are obsessed with perfection. Joshua's eyes remained on the road, scanning every mirror, every reflection, every shadow. Preparedness is not obsession. It's survival. The city streets hummed with ordinary life. Children playing near a park, office workers streaming into buildings, a street musician's faint tune weaving through the traffic noise. Joshua let himself notice it all, absorbing the mundane details that were once invisible to him during operations. Clark's voice came over the phone, quiet but firm. Joshua, your team's doing well. Clients are satisfied. The city is safer for now. Joshua glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Safe isn't permanent, but vigilance is. Clark chuckled softly. Some things never change, huh? Joshua didn't answer. His eyes flicked to the intersection ahead, noting a delivery van with its lights flickering, a pedestrian hesitating before crossing. The world was full of small, unpredictable dangers, nothing like the tactical precision of a battlefield, yet dangerous nonetheless. He adjusted his tie, hands steady on the wheel. Polished, professional, yet always aware. Always ready. As the day waned, Joshua parked the car in a quiet alley near a private residence, a routine pickup for Clark's evening engagements. He stepped out, stretching slightly, feeling the tension in his shoulders loosen, if only for a moment. Isaac and Jerry exited their vehicles as well, walking toward him. Another day survived, Jerry said lightly, though his eyes scanned the surroundings automatically. Joshua allowed a short nod. Another day alive. Another day remembered. Isaac smirked faintly. Poetic, in your own soldierly way. Joshua turned his gaze to the skyline, the sun dipping below the horizon, buildings glowing like coals in the dying light. The city looked peaceful, fragile but alive. And for now, that was enough. He thought again of the men lost, the collateral damage, the moral compromises he'd made to ensure victory. Their faces rose in his mind, not as ghosts to haunt him, but as constants to guide him. Every decision he made from now on carried their memory, their lessons. He placed his hands on the wheel, adjusted the mirrors, and let his gaze sweep the streets once more. Every movement, every scan, every small calculation was a promise. The living would be kept safe. Clark approached from the building entrance, looking relaxed in a way Joshua had learned to recognize as fleeting. Ready? He asked. Joshua nodded. Always. As he drove into the city night, headlights cutting through the darkness, Joshua allowed himself to feel the quiet weight of purpose. The streets rolled past, familiar, unthreatening for now, yet full of the potential for the unknown. He reflected briefly on the life he'd led, from storming embassies as an SAS sergeant, through fire and betrayal, to now, chauffeur, guardian, sentinel. Each role had shaped him, hardened him, but also tempered him with with clarity and restraint. The hum of the engine, the steady rhythm of tires on asphalt, and the predictable pulse of the city gave him a sense of rhythm he hadn't known in years. He was alert, but not frantic, aware, but not burdened. The ghosts remained, but they no longer dictated his actions. He adjusted his tie again, a small ritual of control, and let his eyes sweep through every mirror, every window reflection, every potential threat along the route. Joshua Klene, soldier of shadows, chauffeur of influence, guardian of the unseen, drove on. The road ahead was ordinary, but his vigilance made it extraordinary. And in that quiet, measured drive, he carried the ledger of the fallen, the lessons of the past, and the unyielding promise to protect those who could not protect themselves. The world would move on. The city would continue its indifferent rhythms. And Joshua, ever watchful, would move with it, prepared, calm, and purposeful. Chapter 11, Final Beat, Bittersweet Closure. The city was awake before Joshua opened his eyes, its hum threading through the thin walls of his apartment like a low, insistent heartbeat. Morning light filtered past the blinds, painting stripes across the hardwood floor and onto the photograph he always left on the nightstand. Alan Reese Maddox. Faces frozen in time, reminders of battles fought, of loyalty paid in blood. Joshua rose slowly, muscles stiff from years of habit and old injuries. The apartment was minimal, clean lines, little clutter, practical furnishings, everything in its place. A small coffee maker hissed in the kitchen, filling the air with warmth and the faint, bitter aroma of roasted beans. He poured a cup, letting the first sip anchor him. It was routine, mundane, but grounding. The phone buzzed. A short message from Clark. Meeting in 30. Traffic is light. Be on time. Joshua acknowledged it with a tap, the screen lighting briefly in his palm. Nothing urgent, nothing threatening. The world had moved on, or at least seemed to have. Isaac appeared from the bedroom hallway, already dressed in his standard casual work attire, tablet in hand. Morning. Everything's green. The city's quiet, the clients are happy, and the networks are stable. You'd almost think we retired to a vacation. Joshua let a ghost of a smile touch his lips. Quiet doesn't last forever, but we take what we can get. Jerry shuffled in behind Isaac, rubbing the back of his neck. You ever just sit and feel normal? Joshua sipped his coffee and stared at the city beyond the window. Normal is relative. I feel calm, but vigilance never sleeps. You never know when the calm ends. By 7:15, Joshua was behind the wheel of the sleek black sedan, tie perfectly aligned, seatbelt clicked securely. Clark sat in the rear, going over briefing notes, while Isaac monitored comms from a discreet laptop in the passenger seat. Jerry followed in the lead SUV, eyes scanning, hands resting lightly on the wheel. Joshua started the engine. It purred like a contented predator. The hum of the tires on the asphalt felt familiar, grounding. Traffic lights flicked past, the city moving in predictable rhythms, and yet his eyes scanned constantly. Reflections in windows, pedestrian movement, sudden shifts in shadows. Habit, training, instinct. Clark looked up from his notes. You've been quiet today, Joshua. Thinking too much. Joshua's gaze remained forward, just observing. The city's alive, but subtle signs can tell you everything you need to know. Clark arched an eyebrow. Subtle signs. You ever sleep? Joshua allowed a short, dry laugh. Sleep is for when you're safe. We're safe for now. Isaac glanced at him. You're still scanning the route, like it's an ambush. That never changes, huh? Joshua's eyes didn't leave the road. Awareness doesn't retire. They reached Davenport Technologies' downtown headquarters without incident. Joshua parked the car precisely between two designated spaces, engines still humming. Clark stepped out first, straightening his jacket and smiling at the receptionist. Joshua remained in the driver's seat a moment longer, letting his gaze sweep the plaza, noting potential threats, exit routes, and the positions of nearby security cameras. Routine, yes, but necessary. Jerry approached from the lead SUV, hand raised in silent acknowledgement. All clear, he said. Joshua nodded once. We remain alert, even in routine. As Clark disappeared into the building, Joshua started the engine again. The vehicle glided silently down the street, his hands steady, posture perfect, eyes scanning constantly. He drove with purpose, each decision precise. Later, in the office space of their protective firm, the team convened. Isaac ran through the latest intelligence on client schedules, security briefings, and city alerts. Jerry went over vehicle maintenance logs and patrol routes. Joshua listened, occasionally interjecting, mostly observing. "Everything's stable," Isaac said finally. "No anomalies. No threats. The city's calm for now." Joshua allowed himself a moment to breathe. "For now," he echoed. He thought of Peterson, of the dead operatives, the collateral damage, the lives saved, and the lives lost. The ledger of life and death was private, carried in the quiet corners of his mind. Jerry chuckled softly. "You ever think about taking a vacation? You've earned it." Joshua's expression remained neutral. "Vacations are for forgetting responsibility. I'm not ready for that. My purpose is active. I'm not done." Clark's voice came through the comm from a different location. "Joshua, the meeting went well. Security intact, client satisfied. Standard debriefing tonight." Joshua nodded subtly, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. Acknowledged. As evening approached, Joshua returned to the car for another client run. The streets glowed under streetlights, reflections dancing off wet asphalt from an earlier rain. There was a calmness to it, almost deceptive. He could feel it, the city relaxing, unaware of the unseen shields surrounding it. He adjusted the rearview mirror, scanning intersections and alleyways. Every pedestrian, every vehicle, every light, noted, processed, cataloged. It was second nature. Isaac glanced over from the passenger seat. "It's strange, peaceful nights like this. You'd almost forget why we do this work." Joshua's hands tightened briefly on the wheel. "That's why we stay vigilant. The quiet nights are often the most dangerous, because complacency invites the storm." Jerry's voice came over the radio. "All routes monitored, overwatch in position. No disturbances detected." Joshua's lips pressed into a thin line. "Good. Maintain it." During a brief stoplight pause, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. The journey from storming embassies to protecting civilians in city traffic was surreal. He carried victories, sure, but also the weight of moral compromises and lost friends. He remembered Alan's laugh, Reese's stubbornness, Maddox's calm presence, all reminders that every life mattered, even if he could only honor them privately. Joshua exhaled slowly. He didn't speak the names aloud. No one else needed to hear them. This was ritual, personal, a soldier's way of making peace without ceremony. Traffic shifted. The light turned green. Joshua's hands moved seamlessly, steering, braking, accelerating, merging, all with meticulous precision. Clark, reviewing documents in the rearview mirror, murmured, "You always make this look effortless." Joshua glanced briefly at him. Effortless is preparation hiding behind instinct. Clark's smile was faint but genuine. "I trust my life in your hands anywhere. Always have." Joshua returned his gaze to the road, allowing the simple truth to settle in. He wasn't seeking recognition, medals, or accolades. Purpose was enough. Protection was enough. Living with the cost, remembering the fallen, and carrying on, that was his redemption. Night deepened. Streetlights formed a ribbon of illumination along the boulevard. The city seemed suspended, poised between quiet and chaos, unaware that a sentinel moved through it. Joshua's hands on the wheel were steady. Seatbelt clicked. Engine hummed steady. Mind alert. Every mirror, every reflection, every peripheral movement cataloged. He passed a small park where children had once played before dusk. A faint memory of laughter touched his mind, a reminder of what he protected. He allowed himself a fleeting smile, the smallest acknowledgement of life continuing around him. Isaac's voice came quietly from the tablet. "All sectors stable. No anomalies. Client secure. Night watch continues." Joshua nodded, though Isaac could not see. "Copy that. Maintain vigilance." Jerry's voice, calm but always watchful, came through the calm again. Eyes forward, shadows behind. That's our way. Joshua's lips pressed together in agreement. That was the rhythm now. A quiet vigilance, a constant presence in a world unaware of the dangers it had survived. He thought of the fallen again, not in despair, but in quiet honor. The ledger remained heavy, yes, but it was carried with purpose now, a weight transformed into drive. Every action he took, every movement he made, every life protected was a tribute to those who could no longer protect themselves. The last stretch of road approached, familiar, mundane. The office building lights glowed, street traffic flowing predictably. Joshua's tie remained perfectly aligned. Hands on the wheel, eyes scanning. Every instinct awake. He exhaled lightly, a brief acknowledgement of the city's peace, fleeting though it was. Victory had its costs, but the living endured. The fallen were remembered, the guilty accounted for, and those he protected were safe, at least for tonight. Joshua adjusted the mirrors one final time, scanning the environment as he had done countless times before. The hum of the engine, the click of the seatbelt, the measured rhythm of tires over asphalt, all signals of a life lived with purpose. He drove on, a guardian in quiet, uncelebrated emotion. The city passed by in shadows and light. Every turn, every stop, every reflection a reminder of vigilance, sacrifice, and memory. He had accepted the costs, carried them with honor, and in that act, found his own redemption. Joshua Klene, sentinel, chauffeur, protector, a man forged in chaos, tempered in loss, and at peace in his chosen duty.